You stand with 6 other witnesses. You cannot move. You cannot speak. Your only job tonight is to watch. In the center of the room, an 18-year-old girl in a bridal veil stands frozen. In front of her rests something draped in dark cloth. Behind her waits a physician with a bag of instruments, and beside him an elderly woman whose iron grip on the girl's arm says everything. There is no escape. The girl's mother had wept that morning while braiding her hair, her final words a desperate warning. Do not resist. Whatever they require of you tonight, do not resist. It only makes everything worse. Now the girl reaches out with trembling hands, pulls back the cloth and what lies beneath. Carved from dark wood, polished smooth by 1,000 brides before her, drains the color from her face. But she does not yet know the full horror. The statue is only the beginning. After it comes the physician's examination. After that comes the witnessed consummation. After that comes the final documentation that will mark her body as legally transferred property. Every Roman bride for 1,000 years endured this. Every Roman mother prepared her daughter with the same whispered warning. And when Christianity conquered Rome, they erased it so completely that no one today even knows it happened. Stay with me, because what you are about to discover has been buried for 2,000 years, and by the end you will understand exactly why. This is the truth about Roman wedding nights and the ritual they tried to erase from history. Back to that atrium. Back to the girl in the veil. Back to the moment before everything changed. Her name was Flavia Tirsa, 18 years old, daughter of a minor Roman official who had spent 3 long years negotiating this marriage. The groom was Marcus Petronius Rufus, a 43-year-old grain merchant, wealthy enough to matter, connected enough to be useful. Flavia had met him exactly 3 times before this day. She did not love him. Love was never the point. In Rome, marriage was never about love. It was contract law, a property transfer, a merger of families documented and witnessed with the same cold precision used for the sale of land or livestock. And Flavia was the property being transferred. The wedding procession that morning had been beautiful in its own way. She wore the traditional flame-colored veil, her hair arranged in 6 perfect braids bound with wool ribbons exactly as custom demanded. At the temple, the priests sacrificed a sheep and examined its entrails. The omens were favorable, the gods approved. Her father signed the contracts using the ancient formula that made the union legally binding. Flavia spoke the ritual words that generations of brides had spoken before her. Ubi tu Gaius, ego Gaia. Where you are Gaius, I am Gaia. The phrase meant she was no longer herself. Her legal identity had been erased and rewritten in her husband's name. She belonged to him now. But the ceremony at the temple was only the legal beginning. What waited at the end of the torchlit procession, in the house she had never entered, in the room where witnesses were already assembled, that was where the true transformation would occur. The crowds lining the streets sang as the procession passed, but not hymns or blessings. They sang obscene songs, explicit verses describing in graphic detail exactly what would happen to Flavia that night. Young men shouted crude suggestions that made her face burn beneath the veil. Old women cackled and threw walnuts at her dress, a fertility blessing that felt like mockery. Her mother walked beside her in silence. That morning, while arranging Flavia's hair, her mother had broken down in deep, shuddering sobs she tried to muffle with her hand. When Flavia asked what was wrong, her mother's answer came in a broken whisper. Do not resist. Whatever they require of you tonight, do not resist. It only makes everything worse. Flavia had not understood. She thought she knew what wedding nights involved, the basic mechanics, the expected pain. She had not prepared for what was truly waiting. The procession reached the house of Marcus Petronius Rufus as the last light faded from the sky. The doorway was decorated with wool and greenery, 2 torches burning to mark this as the place where the marriage would be consummated according to law. Her husband stood waiting in the doorway. Behind him Flavia could see too many figures moving in the lamplight. Far too many for any private moment between bride and groom. Marcus lifted her over the threshold. Tradition claimed it was unlucky for a bride to stumble entering her new home, but the gesture echoed something far older, an age when women were carried into their husband's house, whether they wished it or not. The door closed behind her and Flavia finally saw what awaited in the atrium. An elderly woman in formal robes, the Pranuba, whose role was to oversee everything that would happen tonight and later provide testimony if the marriage was ever challenged. A priest whose face was half hidden in shadow. 3 female slaves carrying basins of scented water and clean cloths. An older man with a leather bag at his feet, medical instruments glinting inside. And in the corner, draped in dark fabric that concealed its shape, a wooden structure nearly 4 feet tall. Too many people, too many eyes, too many witnesses for anything Flavia had imagined would be private. The Pranuba stepped forward and took Flavia's hands in a grip that was firm, almost restraining, as if she expected the girl to bolt. "Welcome to your husband's home," she said. "The sacred rites must now be completed. Here is what almost no one tells you about Roman marriage. It was never a romantic union. It was never about love or companionship or building a life together. It was a property transfer, documented and witnessed with the same formality used for the sale of a farm or a ship. Roman law called it conventio in manum, literally coming into the hand. A woman passed from her father's legal ownership into her husband's. Before the late Republic, this transfer was absolute. A husband held the same power over his wife that he held over his slaves, including the right of life and death. By the imperial period, when Flavia walked that torchlit path, the law had softened a little. Women could own some property. Divorce was possible. But the fundamental principle remained unchanged. Marriage transferred a woman from one man's authority to another. And like every important property transfer in Rome, it required verification. The Pranuba guided Flavia toward the draped figure in the corner. Flavia's heart hammered so loudly she could hear it in her ears. The Pranuba's hand stayed on her arm, firm and guiding, allowing no retreat. "You must greet Mutunus Tutunus," the Pranuba said. "You must ask his blessing before your husband approaches. You must offer yourself as tradition requires." Flavia reached out with shaking hands and pulled back the cloth. What stood beneath was carved from dark wood, polished smooth by generations of use. It was shaped with anatomical precision into the form of a phallus. This figure was sized deliberately, proportioned carefully, designed for a specific purpose that became horrifyingly clear as the Pranuba explained what Flavia must do. Mutunus Tutunus was Rome's god of fertility and sexual initiation. Roman brides were required to sit upon the wooden phallus of Mutunus Tutunus as a sacred duty before consummation with their husbands. The ritual was performed in the presence of witnesses. The Pranuba positioned Flavia's body, guided her movements, and instructed her in what was required. The witnesses watched. Her husband watched. The physician waited to perform his examination afterward. And in that moment Flavia finally understood her mother's tears, the obscene songs, and what being a Roman wife truly demanded. She could refuse, in theory, but refusal meant disgrace for her entire family, nullification of the contracts, and return to her father's house as damaged goods. No respectable man would ever marry her. Flavia did not refuse. After the ritual with the statue, slaves washed her in basins of scented water. The washing held religious meaning, purifying her after the encounter with the god, but it was also practical preparation for what came next. The physician stepped forward. This examination was not optional. Before any wedding involving significant property, a Roman bride underwent verification by a physician or midwife. Her virginity was confirmed, her physical state documented, and the record became part of the legal file establishing the bride's value. Flavia had already endured one such examination before the wedding to establish a baseline, to prove she was intact, to verify she had never belonged to another man. Now, after the ritual with Mutunus Tutunus, the physician performed a second examination. This one verified that the sacred rite had been properly completed, that her physical state matched the earlier record, and that she was prepared for consummation. All of it took place in the presence of witnesses. After the examination, Flavia was led to the bedchamber prepared for consummation. The room was decorated according to tradition. The marriage bed had been positioned for clear visibility from the open doorway that would remain open throughout the night. Marcus entered. To Flavia's surprise, he looked nervous. He glanced toward the pranuba with something like embarrassment before approaching the bed. The pranuba's voice rang out, formal and ritualistic. The bride is prepared. The gods have blessed this union. Let the marriage be consummated in accordance with the laws of Rome and the customs of our ancestors. Let witnesses verify the completion. Let no one question that this woman has become a wife. What followed took several hours. The pranuba observed the entire time, occasionally offering instruction to ensure the consummation satisfied every legal requirement. The door stayed open. Everything that happened in that bed was semi-public. At dawn, the physician returned for a final examination. This one confirmed that consummation had taken place, that the bride was now physically changed in the ways that marked her transition from virgin to wife. The examination was documented. The pranuba gave formal testimony about what she had witnessed. The legal transformation was complete. Flavia Tirsa was now a Roman wife. She would live another 40 years. She would bear 4 children, 2 sons and 2 daughters. She would manage her husband's household with competence, attend the festivals, honor the gods, and fulfill every duty expected of a Roman matron. And she would never speak about her wedding night, not to her friends, not to her sisters, not even to her own daughters when their marriages were arranged. For 1,000 years, this was what marriage meant in Rome. Generations of women experienced their wedding nights within this framework. The end came not from internal reform but from external conquest. When Christianity transformed Rome in the 4th and 5th centuries, the old ways were systematically suppressed and the knowledge was deliberately forgotten. Flavia died in the year 131 CE, approximately 60 years old, a wife for more than 4 decades. They lived, they endured, they were silenced. But now, 2,000 years later, someone is finally telling their story.